What would happen if two people from such different worlds met unexpectedly? This is the story of Sarah, a young woman who sells flowers on the streets of New York, and a famous businessman known to all, Donald Trump. Amidst the noise of the city and the fast-paced routine, a simple interaction could change everything. Sarah had always dreamed of opening her own flower shop. Since she was a child, she had been growing flowers in her grandmother's backyard, learning how to care for them and appreciate their beauty. However, life had not been easy for her. Growing up in a low-income neighborhood, her experiences were marked by challenges and uncertainties. The sound of sirens and the smell of hot asphalt were the constant backdrop of her days. Despite the difficulties, her determination kept her strong, and each flower sold represented a step closer to her dream. One day, while selling her flowers on a busy corner, Sarah had an unexpected encounter. Donald Trump, with his unmistakable style and strong personality, was passing by. Intrigued, she decided to approach him, unaware that this conversation would change their lives forever. With a shy smile, she offered him a rose, explaining that each flower had a story, just like each person. He, surprised by her direct and sincere approach, stopped to listen. At that moment, Sarah's true challenge began to reveal itself. Although Trump was a powerful and influential figure, the young woman felt insecure expressing her dreams. She struggled with doubt, questioning whether she truly deserved a chance in the business world. With each word exchanged with the businessman, her heart raced, caught between the fear of rejection and the hope of being heard. The dialogue between them quickly evolved, and Sarah began to share her aspirations of opening a flower shop. She talked about the importance of flowers in her life and how she wanted to bring joy to people during special moments. Trump, initially skeptical, started to notice her passion and determination. The conversation led them to reflect on their own journeys and the lessons they had learned along the way. That interaction would become a turning point in Sarah's life. What began as a simple encounter transformed into an unlikely friendship, where both would learn valuable lessons about dreams, courage, and the strength of human connection. In the end, what seemed like just a flower sale would become the beginning of a new story filled with possibilities and hope. The friendship between Sarah and Donald Trump began to blossom, but not without challenges. The first obstacle arose soon after that meeting on the busy corner. Excited about the possibility of opening her flower shop, Sarah decided she needed a plan. However, the lack of experience and resources left her paralyzed. She felt overwhelmed by the idea of taking the first step, and with each passing day, her insecurities consumed her. Doubt became a weight in her heart. Meanwhile, Donald, now more curious about Sarah's life, began making frequent visits to the corner where she sold her flowers. He shared stories of his journey, revealing the difficulties he faced over the years. However, the life of a famous businessman was very different from that of a young woman struggling to survive in the city. He couldn't help but notice that, despite her ambition, Sarah seemed hesitant, as if she were battling a sea of insecurities. In one of their conversations, Trump decided it was time to help Sarah take a step toward her dream. He offered to assist her in creating a business plan. At first, she was excited by the proposal, but soon anxiety took over. What if she failed? What if she wasn't good enough? This internal voice challenging her grew increasingly loud, and days of hope were followed by nights of doubt. Sarah also began to face resistance from some people close to her. Her childhood friend Lisa didn't understand why Sarah wanted to risk herself in a world that wasn't made for people like them. "You have a great job selling flowers. Why risk everything for a dream that might not work out?" Lisa questioned with genuine concern, but it left Sarah frustrated. She felt that if she didn't try, she would be surrendering to mediocrity. This pressure only heightened her anxiety, and the idea of moving forward seemed even more distant. With Trump's help, Sarah began to research and outline a plan. However, As she delved deeper into the process, new challenges emerged. The location she had dreamed of for her flower shop was too expensive, and the idea of obtaining financing felt like an insurmountable mountain. The lack of money was not just a financial barrier. It was a constant reminder that her reality was different from Trump's. While dealing with these obstacles, Sarah began to realize that her friendship with Trump also presented its own complications. He was someone who always had answers and solutions, but his direct approach to problems sometimes left her feeling intimidated. There were moments when she felt like a child in front of a giant, questioning whether she could truly measure up to him in the business world. This feeling of inadequacy began to create a rift between them. At the same time, Trump was struggling to understand Sarah's vulnerability. He wanted to help, but he didn't know how to address her insecurities without coming across as controlling. The situation intensified when Sarah received an invitation to participate in a local business fair where she would have the chance to present her idea to investors. The event was an opportunity that could change her life, but the pressure left her paralyzed. On the day of the fair, as she prepared to present her project, a wave of fear enveloped her. The thought of speaking in public, of exposing her dreams and vulnerabilities to a group of strangers, felt terrifying. She hesitated, contemplating giving up. Donald, noticing her distress, showed up to encourage her. He told her that she had an amazing vision and urged her not to let fear hold her back, trying to convey confidence. But instead of feeling supported, Sarah became even more confused. She questioned whether she was simply following what Donald wanted or if she was truly ready to fight for her dream. His words, which had once inspired her, now felt like a burden. The pressure to succeed was pulling her further away from her genuine passion for flowers. In this critical moment, Sarah needed to confront not only the external challenges, but also her own internal demons. The struggle between ambition and fear confronted her intensely. Looking at the flowers she had sold for so many years, she remembered how each one carried a story. Just like the flowers, her own experiences had shaped her and made her strong. It was time to remember who she truly was and the dream she had always held. With tears in her eyes, Sarah decided that she could not let doubt hold her back. She took a deep breath and made her presentation. The path to success would be long and filled with difficulties, but at that moment, she made a choice, not to give up. Even if the outcome was not what she hoped for, she would be taking a step toward the life she had always desired. And with that, the friendship between her and Trump would also have the chance to grow, going through its own trials and new beginnings. On the day of the business fair, Sarah felt as if the weight of the world was on her shoulders. Despite preparing diligently, anxiety consumed her. Her heart raced and her mind spiraled with negative thoughts. She wondered if she would stutter or if no one would be interested in her idea. These questions haunted her, and the thought of giving up became more tempting. Donald's presence, which always seemed so self-assured, intensified her insecurity. How could she, a simple flower seller, measure up to such a grand event? As she waited for her turn to present, Sarah observed the other participants. Some were clearly nervous, but others exuded a confidence that seemed unshakable. The comparison made her feel even smaller. It was at that moment that a message on her phone interrupted her thoughts. It was a notification about the death of her grandmother, a figure who had always supported and encouraged her to pursue her dreams. Despair took over. Her grandmother had always believed she could conquer the world, but now, with the loss, Sarah felt lost. With tears in her eyes, Sarah stepped away from the crowd. The pain of loss was overwhelming, and she began to question everything. Why was she here? Who was she doing this for? The idea of opening a flower shop seemed so insignificant in light of her new reality. She sat on a bench looking at the flowers she carried, remembering how her grandmother used to say that each flower had its own story and beauty. But now the beauty seemed dimmed, as if the world around her had lost its colors. Donald, noticing that something was wrong, went in search of Sarah. When he found her, he saw the sadness on her face and, for a moment, didn't know what to say. He sat down beside her, respecting her silence. After a while, he spoke with the softness that was typical of his personality, but now seemed more humanized. He told her that he wasn't good with words in moments like this, but he wanted her to know that he was there for her. His words, which had once seemed like mere encouragement, now echoed as a true offer of friendship. Sarah looked at him, and although the pain was intense, she felt a thread of connection. She told him that she had lost her grandmother. Her voice choked with emotion. "She always believed in me. Now, I don't know if I can believe in myself." Donald listened attentively, without interrupting. He knew that loss was a difficult part of life, and that often people needed time to process their pain. "You know," he began, "I faced losses too. Some were devastating. But I learned that although the pain never completely goes away, it can teach us something about ourselves. Your grandmother wanted you to fight for your dreams. She believed in you." His words touched something deep within Sarah. The idea that her grandmother always wanted her to stand up and fight began to resonate. The flower shop was not just a business. It was a way to honor her memory. It was the realization of the dreams her grandmother always had for her. Sarah realized that fear and pain were not barriers, but parts of her journey. With this new perspective, Sarah stood up. The pressure and sadness were still present, but now there was a new drive within her. "I'm going to do this. I'm going to present," she said, determination beginning to shine in her eyes. Donald smiled, relieved and happy. "That's right. Remember, you're not alone in this." When Sarah stepped onto the stage, the fear was still there, but now it was accompanied by a new strength. She began to speak, and as the words flowed out, she felt her grandmother was there, supporting her. It wasn't just about flowers. It was about passion, about connection, and about the courage to move forward despite the pain. By the end of her presentation, it didn't matter what the investors thought. Sarah had rediscovered a part of herself that had been asleep. The friendship between Sarah and Donald, which had previously faced challenges, now blossomed into a new understanding. They both understood that difficulties could be overcome together, and that even in the shadows of pain, there was always a light guiding them back to the path of hope. With tears of gratitude, Sarah realized that life was a tapestry of moments, and each thread, even the darkest ones, contributed to the beauty of the whole. Sarah felt the weight of sadness and anxiety, but as she stood up and faced the audience, something changed within her. Donald's words echoed in her mind, reminding her that she was not alone. The pain of losing her grandmother was still present, but now she understood that this pain could be a source of strength. As she spoke, the memories of her grandmother blended with the passion she had always had for flowers. It was as if each flower she presented told a story of love and resilience, not just of her own life, but of her grandmother's life. She began to realize that her limitations would not define her future. The insecurity that followed her was just an echo of her own doubts. By sharing her vision, Sarah felt she was not only presenting a project, but also honoring the memory of someone who believed in her. With each word, her confidence grew. She was not just presenting to the investors, she was presenting to herself. Overcoming her insecurities began to materialize into a new understanding of who she was and what she could achieve. After the presentation, regardless of the reactions, Sarah felt lighter. The experience taught her that success was not measured only in money or recognition, but in the courage to pursue her dreams, even when life seemed to crumble. She realized that finding fulfillment was linked to doing something she loved, not just seeking the approval of others. Sarah's internal transformation was reflected in her new perspective on life. She learned to accept that failures were part of the journey. Each stumble, each moment of doubt made her stronger and more capable. She began to see life as a series of opportunities to learn and grow, rather than a cycle of fears and insecurities. Her friendship with Donald grew stronger. He was not just an acquaintance. He became a crucial support in her journey. Together, they began to share their experiences and fears, creating a bond that helped them grow. Sarah realized that the true value of friendships lies in the ability to support and encourage each other during difficult times. Over time, Sarah started to apply the lessons she had learned. She made decisions that reflected her new outlook on life, choosing to pursue what truly mattered. Life was not just about flowers, but about how they could bring joy and hope to people. She was ready to face future challenges with new wisdom, knowing that each difficulty encountered was an opportunity to bloom. And so, with an open heart, Sarah was ready to embrace what life had to offer, one step at a time. Sarah was at a turning point. After months of hard work, the day to present her project at a flower fair had arrived. Her heart raced, and anxiety almost paralyzed her. The audience was there, and the pressure to show her best weighed on her shoulders. But when she looked at the crowd, she saw Donald nodding, silently encouraging her. As she stepped onto the stage, the memory of her grandmother enveloped her like a cloak. "You can do it, my flower," she heard in her mind. Emotion took hold of Sarah, and as she began her presentation, the words flowed with a fervor that surprised her. She spoke about her flowers, but at the same time, she spoke about love, loss, and overcoming challenges. Each story she told brought tears to the eyes of some in the audience, and she felt a deep connection with them. However, in the middle of her presentation, an unexpected critique came from an investor. He questioned her, belittling her work and emotions. Insecurity returned, like a ghost she thought she had left behind. For a moment, the world around her crumbled. But when she looked at Donald, she realized he didn't see her as a failure, but as someone who was trying. It was in that moment that Sarah decided she wouldn't let herself be defeated. With a steady voice, she responded to the investor, sharing how her flowers represented hope and renewal, not just for herself, but for everyone who appreciated them. The audience fell silent, and as her words resonated, she felt a wave of strength within her. In the end, it didn't matter what others thought. She had found her truth. The transformation was complete. Sarah not only overcame doubt, but also became the voice of her own story. Sarah looked at the audience and smiled, feeling a new kind of freedom. The response she gave to the investor not only freed her from insecurity, but also made her realize that her project was an extension of who she truly was. At the end of the presentation, the applause that echoed around her was more than validation. It was recognition of her journey. She knew she had transformed, not just into a presenter, but into an advocate for her beliefs and emotions. The connection she had made with the audience and with Donald motivated her to continue cultivating her flowers and her stories. Sarah understood that true success wasn't about pleasing everyone, but about being true to herself. The journey of overcoming had taught her that every challenge brings an opportunity for growth. Now, inviting everyone to reflect on their own stories, Sarah asked them to share their experiences in the comments. Everyone has a flower inside, waiting to bloom. Like and subscribe to the channel so we can explore more about overcoming and finding beauty in the small things in life together.